In the lively Ghanaian town of Esuom, the name Kofi Mensah stirred discomfort in the hearts of all who heard it. A man of strong stature and a gaze that could silence a crowd, Kofi had earned a reputation not just for being dangerous, but for being untouchable. His wealth came from shady businesses, illicit trade, gambling dens, and a sprawling chain of alcohol spots that fueled the town's vices. His bars never closed. His laughter boomed over drunken brawls. And his threats, when issued, were executed with brutal precision. Most frightening of all, Kofi feared no God, no spirit, no judgment. The only God he served was money, as he would often say with a smirk, lifting his glass. And money has never failed him. He wore gold chains, drove imported cars, and never walked alone. Even the police respected his boundaries. And yet, behind the bravado, something in Kofi was slowly dying, a quiet hollowness that grew louder with every night of drunken laughter. One day, after a particularly violent dispute at one of his spots ended with a man stabbed and rushed to the hospital, Kofi locked himself in his office, drank himself into a stupor, and collapsed on the floor. That was the night everything changed. In the silence of drunken unconsciousness, Kofi had a dream, or rather, a vision. He found himself standing in the middle of a vast desert. The sky above him twisted with flames, and beneath his feet, the sand shifted like waves. He tried to run, but he couldn't move. Suddenly, a great light blazed from the sky. He fell to his knees as a voice thundered through him, not around him, but through him. Kofi Mensah, you have been chosen not for destruction, but for salvation. Receive my son, Jesus Christ, and go to the village of Ayensu. There, you will turn hearts back to me. The light vanished. Kofi awoke gasping, soaked in sweat, trembling. He thought it was the alcohol. But the voice stayed with him. The image. The message. It wouldn't leave. For days he couldn't sleep. He lost his appetite. He didn't drink. The people around him noticed something was different. One night, he knelt in the very office where he'd once cursed God and whispered, "Jesus, if you're real, save me." That night, the chains of darkness broke. Kofi gave his life to Christ. Kofi's transformation shocked the town. He shut down his bars. He gave away his alcohol stock. He returned stolen money to families and knelt to apologize to people he had once threatened. Who would have thought, they whispered. Kofi Mensah, the God-fearer. But Kofi's change was not only for Esuom. He remembered the voice, go to the village of Ayensu. Ayensu was a village shrouded in spiritual darkness. At its center stood a massive shrine, built of stone and adorned with skulls, animal skins, and symbols etched in blood. Its priest, Nana Kwaku Obonsom, was said to speak with the gods. People feared him more than any mortal. Many believed he could summon death with a whisper. Kofi journeyed to Ayensu with nothing but a small bag, a Bible, and a fire in his heart. The villagers watched him with suspicion. Who was this stranger, preaching a foreign god in the land of the old spirits? Kofi started small. He preached in the market, offering prayers for the sick, telling his story with trembling honesty. Some scoffed. But others, especially the youth, were intrigued. A few even followed him to the edge of the village to pray. Soon, the whispers reached the shrine. Nana Kwaku Obonsom sat in his dark chamber, incense burning around him, as a messenger knelt. "The people are listening to the preacher," the messenger said. The priest's eyes narrowed. "He must be silenced," he said. The days that followed were like sparks in dry grass. Kofi's preaching began to ignite change in Ayensu. A crippled boy walked after prayer. A woman who had been plagued by night terrors found peace for the first time in years. These testimonies spread like wildfire. But so did fear. The shrine, which had long controlled Ayensu with curses, sacrifices, and rituals, was being ignored. Offerings lay untouched. The drumming from the sacred grove stopped as fewer people visited. For the first time, Nana Kwaku Obonsom felt his power slipping. The preacher was undoing years of their work. The old priest cried out, clutching his staff. "This must end. We will not let this stranger mock the gods." He called a secret meeting with his inner circle, witch doctors, diviners, and a few loyal elders. There, in the smoky darkness of the shrine, they performed a dark ritual, summoning ancestral spirits to curse Kofi's mission. They crafted wooden toys, tied with red cloth and bones, placing them at crossroads and trees he passed each day. But none of it worked. Kofi, unaware of the curses being hurled his way, continued preaching, strengthened by prayer. A local pastor had joined him, and they began holding evening services under a large tree near the riverbank. It was then that Kofi, led by the Holy Spirit, decided to organize a grand crusade, a 3-night revival meant to break the stronghold over Esuom once and for all. "I believe God will move," he declared to his small group. "Chains will break. The village will see his power." Flyers were distributed. Loudspeakers announced the event. Music teams from surrounding towns arrived to support. Even curious villagers who still feared the shrine began preparing to attend. But not everyone was preparing for worship. In the hidden chambers of the shrine, Nana Kwaku Obonsem had hatched a plan. He summoned 2 loyal enforcers, ruthless thugs known for carrying out silent executions in the village and beyond. When the preacher steps onto that stage, the priest hissed, handing them 2 black pistols, "End him. No one will question it. We will say it was the God's wrath." They accepted the task without hesitation. The plan was to cross the river that bordered the crusade ground, sneak through the back trail, and strike during the final worship song when all eyes were closed in prayer. The stage was set. The crusade night arrived. The field near the river was filled with people, men, women, and children, all gathered to hear the preacher who had once been a feared criminal. Kofi stood backstage, heart pounding, eyes lifted to the darkening skies. Clouds were gathering. The first 2 hours went beautifully. The choir sang, and people danced with joy. Kofi preached with fire, his voice echoing across the field. But then, without warning, the wind shifted. A heavy breeze blew through the trees, and the skies rumbled. Kofi paused mid-sermon as the first drops of rain fell. He raised his hands and prayed loudly, "Lord, stop the storm so that your word will be fulfilled." Instead, the heavens broke open. Rain pelted down like drums on tin roofs. People scattered, covering their heads. The loudspeakers crackled, then went silent. The field turned to mud. Kofi dropped to his knees, weeping in the downpour. "Why now, Lord?" he cried. "Why would you bring me this far, just to embarrass me?" He sat alone on the stage, soaked and crushed, as the crusade grounds emptied. His heart was heavy. Had he failed? Had God abandoned him? He left the village that night in silence. Weeks passed. Kofi didn't pray. He didn't preach. He wandered through Esuom like a ghost. Eventually, the guilt and confusion drove him back to the bottle. Every night, he sat at his old bar, now reopened under new management, sipping quietly in a dark corner. One night, as the rain fell outside, an old drunkard stumbled in and recognized him. "Oh, you crusade man," he laughed, pointing. Kofi barely looked up. "Let me tell you a story," the man slurred, sitting beside him. "I was in Esuom, the night of your crusade. You think that rain spoiled everything, right?" Kofi gave a half-hearted shrug. "Well, let me tell you something you don't know," the drunkard said, leaning closer. "The shrine priest sent 2 boys to kill you. They had guns. The plan was to shoot you during the final song." Kofi froze. They tried to cross the river to the crusade ground, but the rain, it turned the river into a flood. They drowned, both of them. They pulled their bodies out the next day. The drunkard laughed again. "You thought God failed you. But that rain, that storm saved your life." Kofi sat stunned, the glass falling from his hand and shattering. That night, Kofi walked through the rain, this time, not in sorrow, but in awe. He returned to the same crusade ground, now covered in wild grass. He knelt in the mud, lifted his face to the storm, and wept. Lord, you were protecting me. I failed to see it. I doubted you. But you never left me. Forgive me. A peace washed over him, unlike anything he'd known. From that day, Kofi began preaching again, stronger, wiser, more humbled. His story of failure, deliverance, and God's unseen protection resonated with thousands. He traveled from village to village, breaking the fear of shrine and idol gods worship and revealing the power of Jesus Christ. Eventually, he returned to Ayensu, this time, with hundreds following. The shrine had crumbled, abandoned after the priest's mysterious disappearance. In its place, a church was built on the very ground where the old gods had reigned. And whenever it rained, Kofi no longer wept. He smiled. Because the goodness of God prevails forever. Because he knew. Sometimes, God answers not with sunshine, but with storms. Not to destroy you, but to deliver you.